Hello there, and welcome to Really Cool Excel. Today I'm going to explain about Excel functions that count data, which is not the same as functions that calculate data. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take sum as an example. Sum calculates the figures in a range of cells and produces a total. But if you want to know how many figures are in the range, that's where the count functions come in. First, here's count A, which will count the number of cells in a range that are not empty, or conversely, cells that have got something in them. Here's a quick example. I need to know how many dates are in this list, and I'll put the result in B16. Click Insert function, which we've used before. If count A is not on the most recently used list here, just use the search field further up to find it. Here's the result of the search. Count A is right at the top and already selected. As always, the description of the function is here. As I said earlier, count A counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. Click OK to accept that, which throws up this dialog box. Count A only needs one parameter, in this case the range of cells containing the dates. When I select the range like this, B2 to B15 is entered in the first value field. Incidentally, if I had other ranges that I wanted to include, I'd just enter them in the value field 2, then value field 3, and so on. In fact, count A can analyze up to 255 separate ranges, but let's not go there today. Click OK to accept, and there's the result, 14 dates in the range. And to prove it's working properly, I'll delete one of the dates, making the result 13. I've used count A here to count dates, but remember, because its job is to count cells that are not empty, count A will count anything: dates, numbers, words, or a mixture of all three. So that's count A. Next one up is COUNTIF. This function will count the number of cells in a range that meet a given condition. So it's a combination of count and if. And just to point out that if you would like to learn how to use the if function, it's covered in an earlier video, number 4, from the Really Cool Excel series. Here are our dates again, this time with some names against them. I want to know how many times Amy appears on this list and put the result in B16. To go back to the description of COUNTIF, it will count the number of cells in a range that meet a given condition. In this example, the given condition is Amy. Back to Insert function again, search for COUNTIF, check the description, and click OK. COUNTIF has two parameters. The first one, as with count A, is the range of cells, so I'll select them. And the second parameter is the given condition, Amy, which I'll type in the second field. Click OK, and the result is 3. Now I know you could have counted that yourself. It's a very small range after all. But why bother? Let Excel do the work for you. That's what it's there for. And your data range could be huge. Before we move on, let me explain the formula structure, or syntax if we're being very formal. If you have more than one parameter in a formula, they must be separated by commas, and any text we are using must be in quotes. This comma separator and the quotes were also used in if, so go on, check out the if video. It's number 4. You know you want to. If I now want to count the number of times Mark appears on the list, I could just edit the formula and change it to Mark. As you see, it works perfectly well, and the only problem is you have to keep editing the formula every time you want to change the name. I could even set up a separate formula for each person, but that's just way too much work. So let's design a more elegant solution. Instead of always placing your results at the bottom of the data range, you might consider placing them somewhere else on this sheet, or even on another sheet. It may not be necessary for you to view the data being analysed, in which case the results can be anywhere. But to keep things simple, I'm just going to work up here. A couple of headings first. The input cell will be below name, and the result cell will be below count. Then shade these cells in blue, bold and centered, just to make the information stand out a bit more. Now this time I'm not going to use the insert function button. I'll type out the formula so you can see a different method. So equals COUNTIF and open bracket. Excel shows me the syntax, so as long as I'm familiar with the function, I should be able to complete it from here. The first parameter is the range, so select it, B2 to B15. Then a comma to separate the parameters, and then select the input cell, E2, where I'm going to type in the name. You'll remember we put Amy in quotes because Amy is text, but E2 isn't text, it's a cell reference, so it doesn't need quotes. Then finish off with the close bracket. The result is 0, but that's because E2 is empty. When I type Mark in E2, I get a result. Change the input cell to Christina, and the result changes. So that's a brief explanation of COUNTIF. Finally, COUNTBLANK, which does exactly as it suggests. It counts blank cells. Here's a range of data. Now let's imagine this is source data that feeds into other worksheets, and therefore it's vital that there are no blank cells in it. You might be worried that someone else might delete some of this data by accident, which would have an impact on results somewhere else. The solution is to put in a COUNTBLANK formula to flag up if any cells are deleted. It's a simple one, equals COUNTBLANK, open bracket, the data range, and close bracket to finish off. 0 is the answer. Delete a cell to prove it. 1. Again, I know you could do this just by looking, but the data range and the COUNTBLANK formula might be in different places, or the data could be so huge you can't easily see it all. So those are some examples of some uses of some of the count formulas. I'm sure you'll be able to figure out other ways to use COUNTA, COUNTIF and COUNTBLANK. I'll be developing these further in future videos, so keep checking back with us to see what's new. In the meantime, I'll leave you now to go off and experiment, and if you'd like more practice, download the associated Excel file from the website. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.